The Yarn of Injun Joe. Chapter 1. Skedaddling from St. Petersburg. Now don't you go believing Injun Joe up and died in that blame McDougal's cave like the gossiping folks of St. Petersburg reckoned. No, sir. He come out of that dark hole, blooded up considerable, but his spirit wasn't broke one whit. He lit out from that poky little town from Missouri, to them as knows it, quicker'n a scalded hound. 'Twasn't just the law he was dodging. No, he was shucking off a name, a cuss, a whole passel of lies folks pinned on him. They called him Injun, a half-breed devil, fit only for spitting at and fearing. I ain't just running from sheriffs and such, Joe muttered to the night air. I'm running from what they made me out to be. Revenge? Pshaw, I'm done with it. I'm after freedom, and I aim to get it. Joe had naught but a sway-backed nag, a knife sharp enough to shave a hog, and 4 bullets rattling in an old pistol that had seen better days. He struck out for parts unknown, with hunger gnawing at his innards, worse'n a weasel in a henhouse. Up on a lonesome ridge near Amarillo, he clapped eyes on a sight to make a preacher cuss. Buffalo, thick as fleas on a dog, stretching clear to kingdom come. All that meat, Joe grumbled, and me with nothing but a pop gun and a pig sticker. A buffalo'd laugh at such foolery. He made do with a scrawny armadillo, roasted in its own shell till it was a sorry, bitter mess, what you might call a supper for a man too ornery to starve. On he trudged toward Albuquerque, footsore and half-crazed from the sun. Come one dusk, he stumbled on an old crone tending a fire, with a pot of beans bubbling like a witch's brew. She waved him over, and they ate in silence, the desert swallowing their words like a dry gully soaks up rain. Was that old gal real? Joe wondered after, his belly full but his head swimming. Or was I so tuckered and parched I conjured her up? All she'd said was, "Keep to the rivers, boy, and head west." And that's what he done. Chapter 2. Canyon de Chelly, a newfangled start. Joe fetched up in the red dirt country of the Navajo, where the land's all fire and stone. The old folks there eyed him like he was a fox in the chicken coop, but they didn't run him off. He spilled his tale. St. Petersburg, the cave, the weight of being called Injun like it was a cuss word. They listened, quiet as tombstones. Then they give him a new handle, Ninuchi Nishwi, him that runs. Not 'cause he was yeller, mind you, but 'cause he was breaking free, like a colt busting a corral. I ain't hiding, Joe reckoned, staring at them red canyon walls. I'm finding who I am, and I'll be hanged if it ain't a sight better'n what I was. That canyon de Chelly was wilder'n a bobcat with its tail afire. Joe slept under cliffs big enough to shame a cathedral, dodged rattlesnakes that'd make a sinner pray, and chawed on mescal to keep from starving or dying of thirst. In them scorching days, when the sun baked his hide and his brains, visions come creeping in. A puma with eyes like live coals stared him down one night, not saying a word, but speaking plenty. "You're home," it seemed to growl. A white tree, blasted by lightning, pointed him toward something bright and true. A young'un, face half painted like Joe's own, grinned and says, "Tell folks what you seen, and don't skimp on it." Joe hightailed it back to the Apache village and told the elders all he'd saw. They nodded, slow and solemn, like they knowed he'd face the fire and come out true. They taught him their ways, herbs that heal, fires that talk, how to read the sky like a book and hear the wind's secrets. I ain't the feller that runs no more, Joe thought, feeling the canyon's heartbeat in his bones. I'm the one that knows. Now Joe abides in Canyon de Chelly, learning from old folks wise as owls, from medicine women, from rocks older'n sin, and from rains that come and go like shy young'uns. He's fixin' to be a shaman some day, with nary a thought for revenge nor fear. He don't want to be feared no more. He wants to heal. Chapter 3. The Vision. Questing Wanderer. Come spring of '41, down in the shadow of Sierra Blanca, a young mescalero Apache feller, once called Nanyuchi by his Navajo kin, come traipsing back from a vision quest in the Mojave Desert. His eyes had a queer, quiet fire, like a man who danced with spirits and heard the old earth herself thump like a drum. The Mescalero elders, led by a creaky old medicine man named of Cigarito, sized him up and saw he weren't the same. They give him a new handle, Diweni Yisomi, he who hears the earth, and I reckon they wasn't far wrong. This feller weren't no common vrasa, no sir. He could outrun a pronghorn on them sun-baked plains, and on his stallion, Spirit, he tore across the land like a storm blow down from the Sangre de Cristo peaks. In them twisty canyons, he'd vanish like smoke off a mescal fire, only to pop up with healing plants, chala for cuts, yucca for grit, whispered to him by the desert like it was an old pal. He knowed the smell of rain on red rock, the tunes of the Rio Grande, and how to keep breathing in a land that'd sooner bake you than bless you. But that spring the Mescalero was in a fix. A winter meaner and a rattler's hiss had stripped their stores bare. The womenfolk planted the three sisters, corn, beans, squash, but the ground was stubborn as a mule. Round a dwindling fire, the people's faces was pinched with hunger and plumb scared. A little gal, scarce 8-year-old, clung to her ma, whimpering, "Will the land turn its back on us?" Diweni Yisomi sat off by his lonesome, staring into the fire's dying coals. Them embers pulsed like they was alive, talking in pictures instead of words. In his mind's eye, a herd of Tatanka buffalo, to you and me, come thundering across the plains, their hooves shaking the dirt under a sky red as blood. Come dawn, he didn't say boo, just swung atop Spirit, trusting that old horse's nose for sweet grass where buffalo might roam. For 3 days he crossed dry gullies and wind-whipped mesas, with the Sacramento mountains watching like stone-faced grandpas. Doubt started chewing at him. Had the earth played him for a fool? But on the 4th evening, as the sky bled ochre over the Rio Grande, there they was, a sea of buffalo, their breath steaming like a fog, moving like the land's own heartbeat. Diweni Yisomi slid off Spirit, his ticker pounding fit to bust. Alone amongst them shaggy giants, he danced a sacred dance, his feet tracing patterns his ancestors taught him in dreams. Them buffalo stood stock still, their black eyes locking with his. They knowed him, not as a hunter, but as kin, a healer who'd heard the earth's song. He plucked a tuft of buffalo hair from the ground, a promise sealed tighter than a preacher's oath. Chapter 4. The Hunt That Saved a People. When he got back, the Mescalero gathered under a sky prickly with stars. He held that coarse buffalo hair to the firelight, and a murmur run through the crowd like a breeze through cottonwoods. "Tatanka," he said, soft as a prayer. "They're waiting for us." The elders nodded, slow and sure, and the warriors geared up. Guided by his vision, 400 strong rode out for a hunt that was half holy, half knife sharp. They took only what they needed, enough to fill bellies, not greed, giving thanks for every life laid down. That night, the camp was lit up like a revival meeting. Fires crackled, songs rose, and the smell of buffalo stew set mouths to watering. That little gal who'd feared the land's silence come running up to Diweni Yisomi, holding out a bracelet wove from yucca fiber. "You heard the earth," she says, her eyes shining like stars. He grinned, slipping that bracelet on his wrist, a new knot in his tie to the land. Now, under them blood-red peaks of the Sangre de Cristo, the Mescalero sing high praises, not just for the Tatanka, but for Diweni Yisomi, the healer who listened when hope was scarcer than rain. He brought life back to his folks by hearing the earth's eternal tune, a song older than the rocks and truer than a mother's love. Under the star-sprinkled skies of Sierra Blanca, the Mescalero Apache camp was humming with life, like a beehive after a good bloom. Diweni Yisomi, he who hears the earth, had led his folks to a buffalo feast that filled their bellies and hearts, but now a shadow darker than a thunderhead was creeping close. Round the campfires, where embers danced like spooks with the jitters, a little gal clutched her yucca bracelet and piped up, "Who's gonna keep us safe from enemies, now we got rifles and horses?" Diwa Yasumi turned his eyes to the Sangre de Cristo mountains, where the wind sighed through the pines like ghosts telling secrets. The old earth whispered to him, clear as a church bell, "Fetch weapons for protection, snag horses for freedom." He called the elders together, solemn as a judge. "We got 100 buffalo hides," says he, "but horses we gotta round up ourselves. The earth's pointing us to wild mustangs." The council agreed to part with 50 hides, each painted with suns and moons, sacred as a preacher's promise, in a ceremonial blanket wove from yucca and deer hide, blessed by that little gal's songs. These was to be swapped with Don Esteban, a Mexican trader down by the Rio Grande, known for his stash of rifles and bullets.